Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CROC Podcast, Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer. I am Angel Santana, the co-host and producer, and of course, as always, led by our dear friend and host, Dr. E. Today, we're bringing you a special rewind episode from our archives. Over the years, we've had many conversations designed to educate, encourage, and support cancer survivors, thrivers, caregivers, and families. Some of those conversations continue to resonate long after they first aired, and today's episode is certainly one of them. In this powerful discussion, Dr. E asks a simple yet profound question. What would you do if you only had 5 years left to live? Together, we'll explore perspective, purpose, mortality, hope, and the lesson cancer survivors often teach the rest of us about making every day count. So sit back, reflect, and join us as we revisit this meaningful episode of the CROC Podcast. And now, here's your rewind episode, the 5-year plan. What would you do if you only had 5 years left? Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer, we know it as the CROC Podcast, starts right now.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Howdy, CROC Nation. Dr. Tommy and Ellie here with you with another amazing CROC podcast for the most worthy, amazing, brave, courageous son of a guns on the face of the earth, our cancer survivors / thrivers. Joining me, as always, Angel Santana. Have faith, let it begin. Angel, what do you say, brother?
Hey, what can I tell you? It's a beautiful night. It's a beautiful day. It's always a good time to record a CROC Podcast episode.
You know, I love this because I'm going to be away next week. So this is an early recording, and I'm so excited. I have a lot of energy because I have that pre-vacation energy. But more importantly, we just did a podcast a couple of days ago. So I'm kind of really still like in the podcast kind of state of mind, as Billy Joel would say.
That's it, brother. Let's make it work. Let's make it work.
So, Angel, what would you do if I told you you only have 5 years of life left? How would you handle that?
I would probably start off by making sure that my family was going to be okay when I'm no longer here. And then I would make sure I visited the key areas that I never thought I would visit.
Now, when you say key areas, do you mean the red light district and the medical marijuana dispensaries?
No, I before all the stuff that is happening in the world today, I probably would have went to go see Jordan, Paris, and Rome.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautifully said. So, Angel, you know what our whole life is? Our whole life is about helping our cancer survivor thrivers manage their survivorship, give them tools, give them support, give them methods to alleviate their pain and their discomfort and their distress, and sometimes, if not always, their fear. And I think one of the things cancer survivors / thrivers all have in common is that fear that cancer is going to be their death sentence, is going to be what brings them to the end of their story. And again, this is going on our 3rd year, I guess, of this podcast. And I don't think we've ever done a podcast without that in mind. We just did a couple of podcasts where I'm going to maybe go back a little bit and repeat myself on a couple of different things. But, you know, all of these podcasts, where do they come from? They come from my head. You know, they come from, you know, something that inspires me. We talked about my grandfather, how when I was a kid and I loved him so much, and he was the guy I looked up to the most in life. You know, I would, you know, and he was only in his 70s at the time. No, maybe even in his 60s, you know, when I was really a kid. And I'd say, man, that dude, how does he get up every day? How does he get out of bed? I mean, he doesn't have that much time left. I mean, what the hell is he thinking? You know, how does he manage that? And then we might have talked about something that I've always been very astounded by. So if you don't know by now that I'm a sports fanatic, then, you haven't been listening to my podcast. So in sports, we'll say basketball, where there's a clock that counts down toward the end of the game. And it will say 7 minutes and 52 seconds, 7 minutes and 51 seconds, 7 minutes and 50 seconds. And the timer goes all the way down to 1 minute.
Oh, yeah.
And do you know what happens after it goes below 1 minute?
Starts to count down the seconds.
The crazy clock goes on, and the crazy clock is 59, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 58, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And it goes, and I've always been so enamored by the crazy clock. And I use the crazy clock as a metaphor. So to me, the crazy clock goes off when we know our time is coming to an end, right? So that's the metaphor for that. Our cancer survivors, I almost feel automatically, I think, consider the crazy clock to start when they get their diagnosis of cancer, whether they have a stage 1 breast cancer, stage 1 prostate cancer, they're all going to be cured. They're going to live a normal life. But I think that in their heads that the crazy clock has gone off and they're now on their countdown. And we're going to talk about this for a second. But is it really valid? Is that a really valid thought process? And then I thought about, my personal journey, and you and I, Angel, we look at ourselves, and now you're downstream of where I am now, but I was where you were when the kids were young or whatever. And I began to kind of think about my own mortality and what my number was going to be, what is going to be that last day of my life. And, I'm looking at my little kids, and the first thing you said would have been the exact same thing I said when I was your age, and make sure I provide for my family or whatever. And then I started sort of thinking like an actuary. And I don't know if you know what an actuary is, but they're mathematicians that are hired by insurance companies, and they basically allocate risk to people when they give life insurance, or they're almost handicapping a person's life. So when I was about your age and my kids were young, I started becoming an actuary of my own life. Will I make it to 60? No men in my family really ever made it to 60. Would I make it to 70? Would I make it to 80? Would I even make it to 50? Would I make it to 40? Like, I didn't even really have much of a sense. And I used to take my family history and my personal health issues and say, what are my chances of making to X, Y, and Z? And this all plays in between my grandfather and the crazy clock and my personal journey. And I also want to integrate, before we start the podcast, to like really get into it. I don't know if you know this, Angel, but cancer survivors / thrivers are taught, it's almost ingrained in them to think in 5-year aliquots, because we almost look at cancer. When someone comes to me with prostate cancer and I have the nomogram up, they'll say to me, what's my survival expectation? And I'll say, well, your 5-year survival expectation is X. And why do I say 5-year? Why don't I say 10-year? Why don't I say 20-year? Is because all of the data that we have, and we look at cancer almost, and this is not true for all cancers, but we look at cancer and say, well, if you make it 5 years, chances are you got this. You're done. We look at that, and everyone hangs their hat. I can't tell you how many times over 35 years, someone would almost be counting down the days until the 5-year anniversary of their diagnosis. So it's almost like they could go, whew, I'm glad that's over. And that's another reason I used for this podcast, what would you do if I told you had 5 years to live? Because the statistics in oncology are geared toward the 5-year survival. And the last thing I wanted to tell you before we started the podcast officially was, when we talk about stage 4 cancer, and we should do more podcasts for our stage 4 metastatic survivors. When I first started practice, if you had a stage 4 cancer, no matter what, like you had that was the number, the other number is the 6-month number, right? So there's a 5-year number and the 6-month number. It's like you have stage 4, you have brain metastasis, you have bone metastasis, you know what, 6 months, that's kind of, think about it. That's like your number. It might be less, it might be more. We don't know, but like 6 months, that's the number. And I think to myself, things are so much different now. Thank God. Some stage 4 cancer patients actually become curable, believe it or not.
Really?
They have what's called oligometastatic disease. So you treat the primary, and if there's one small spot, you get rid of that. And you know what? They do great. But even in patients that don't have that luxury, stage 4 patients, 6 months is like a joke. Like if someone comes into me with stage 4 and they say, Doc, can you get me more than 6 months? I'll go, I could do that standing on my head. You might not make it. You may die of this disease, but you ain't dying in 6 months. You probably have a couple of years that we could figure shit out and get you where you need to be. Can't give you much more than 5 years, but let's use that as our clock. And that's a really good introduction to what we're going to talk about today. So your thoughts as we start.
I think it's interesting that, we can look at the clock, and it's funny. One of my good friends, I always say he lives by the clock. So it is very interesting to look at it from this point of view. And I think it's only going to make things better for all of us, even for those that don't have cancer that listen to our show, but more importantly, those survivors.
Boom. You just stole my thunder. And thank you for that. It's a really good, foreshadowing of what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about, I want to start the formality of this podcast by talking about the spin and what I call the new age hogwash, right? So a lot of times, and again, our survivors probably hang their hats on a lot of these sayings and expressions and positive, reinforcements. Like if they say, it's not the years of life, it's the life in the years you live, right? If someone's telling me I'm dying, I'm like, no, I want the years. I don't care about what I'm doing, like the quality of the year. I want more time.
Absolutely.
So like I call that the new age hogwash. If you're afraid to die, then you're afraid to live. Hogwash. We're all afraid to die. I don't care who you are. Everyone has that trepidation because we don't know what's coming next. So let's put away all of these pretenses. Let's throw all of these feel-good statements. Let's not insult our survivors, thrivers with that nonsense. Let's talk turkey when it comes to this. You got 5 years left, okay? So first thing I want to talk about is 5 years really a lucky thing or an unlucky thing? So let's talk about ways you can die. So you can be that guy who's like sitting down with his friend Angel and his friend Rod and eating a big rack of ribs. And then all of a sudden, your buddy's head is on his plate of ribs and he's checked out. Like no warning. He's done. It's time. His ticket has been stamped. The good Lord has come down and taken him and raptured him up to heaven. And that's that. So that's one way you can go. But if you know you don't have a lot of time, and say you have a day, I could make a lot of damage in a day, Angel. I could spend a lot of money in one day. I can ruin my kids' inheritance I could put a good dent in it if I knew I had one day left, okay? So the other thing is you can't really blow it out if you know you have 5 years. It's just a little bit too much time. And another disadvantage is it's a lot of time to think. So we're going to kind of talk about that as well. The other thing is, if we do know we're going to kind of be living this 5-year timeline, I think that we would all agree we want to try to maintain a practical, sensible life. And that includes work, that includes projects, that includes people and relationships. And the most important thing is that even though our time is limited, we never want ourselves to lose touch with the purpose of our life, our life's purpose. And we need to learn and continue to expand to sort of fulfill that life purpose. And I think you would agree with that. So
Absolutely.
the first bit of advice would be that maintaining a practical life where you continue as is, but with even more interest in learning. And sometimes I think to myself, why would I care to read this classic book? Or why would I need to learn, how to use a certain lure on stripers near a reef? Or why would I need to learn a new recipe for wok cooking, right? Like, why? I'm dying. I'll be dead in 5 years. Who cares? Even more of a reason to try to learn that new technique for fishing. Even more of a reason to use that new chili oil in your wok. Even more of a reason, to read that new poem from that new writer. We want to continue to expand, even though we might be living during the crazy clock. And the secret, Angel, we say it maybe every other podcast. The secret is that people who don't have cancer have the same contract as everyone else. That is an NFL contract. Again, another sports analogy. If you get an NFL contract and you get an $80 million contract, Angel, that contract is only as good as the paper it's written on. If you get your teeth knocked out, or if you get your brain bashed, or your shoulder damaged, or your knee blown out, and you can't play football anymore, that $80 million just goes away in a puff of smoke. And that's exactly what life is. The secret advantage of space, the secret advantage of the space where our thrivers and survivors have this advantage is in the fact that they don't have this denial. They're not in denial. They know what they've got. They know what the risks are. They know their mortality is on the line, and they live their life day to day to the best of their ability. And we go around and we're too afraid to even think about death, acknowledge death. We're in this big denial. So that's the secret. And we do go over this quite a lot in the podcast. So I am happy that we do acknowledge that. The other thought I have, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. What if I were to tell you that we can take the 5-year egg timer and turn it upside down? And actually, I'm going to put it forth to everyone listening to this podcast, whether you have cancer, stage 1, stage 4, whatever, or if you're a caregiver or a family member of somebody with cancer, I'm going to tell you, let's all live this philosophy. Let's all assume, no matter who you are, that we have 5 years to live, that we don't have a minute past that. Let's start that with an assumption. And now let's look at, if we do have that as our starting point, we've accepted that as our possibility, how would we live our life?
Interesting thought.
It is, right? And I love this. I think this is a great provocative podcast. So first of all, we're throwing away all of that long-term planning. We're throwing away, in 20 years, I'm going to be able to retire. In 25 years, I'm finally going to get to Europe. In 30 years, I'm going to go see the Mona Lisa. In 40 years, I'm going to do that Alaskan cruise. We're throwing that out the window. That's gone. Long-term planning, gone. We have a 5-year plan. Number 2, we're going to keep everything simple. And this is not a word, but we make them up, right, Angel? Liquidatable. No, when we talk about keeping our assets liquid, I'm not just talking about finances. I'm talking about having everything in place for the day we die, having our will done, having all the things that we want to accomplish in our 5 years done, having what we want to say or have said about us. We want all of that done. We want our children or our heirs to know what the heck they're doing when we're gone off this earth. We want all of that done. Whether we're dying in 5 years or not, done. Number 3, our possessions. Angel, I look at us in our lives. I look at you you're in the part of life where you're collecting. You have kids and you have the toys and you have a house full of junk, good junk, but it's junk. And I'm looking at my possessions, and except for my jersey collection, which I need to do something about, honestly, I am trying to totally streamline all of my possessions, because when my mom passed away, 10 years ago, and I went in her basement and I looked at all the stuff she wouldn't let me throw away while she was alive. I'm talking about broken TV sets, moldy books, junk. I say to myself, do I want my kids to go through all of my junk, or should I go through all my junk now so that I don't have to deal with it? Because let's face it, I'm on a 5-year plan. The other thing, there's a famous thing called the bucket list. So let's keep the bucket list short. Let's make it achievable. Let's make it impactful. Let's see. You want to go to Antarctica? Cool. But wouldn't you want to go see Paris first, right? I can get to Paris pretty easy. Getting to Antarctica, that's another story. If I make it 5 years, then we could talk about Antarctica. Let's get to Paris, right? That's a metaphor. You understand. Number 2 is that we want to make sure that we have priorities and boundaries. We only have 5 years. Half of the people that I used to hang around with, I have no idea why I hung around with them. God bless them. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but if I'm still hanging around with you, that means that you mean something to me. If you listen to my podcast, I don't hang around with you anymore. There's a reason. All right. So I'll say that. The other thing is, I don't think we should ever live our life with any regrets. We've all made mistakes in our life. We have to put them behind us. But we have to live our lives with the knowledge that we don't want to do something that we will regret, because let's say we're still on that 5-year plan, right? We're not on the 10-year plan. We don't have a lot of time. If we make a mistake, we won't have the time perhaps to correct that mistake. So no regrets. Also, we should shore up, fix, repair, strengthen our relationships. Remember, those relationships that we have, the ones that are meaningful to us, we want to make them great. So our relationship with our children, our relationship with our parents, with our family members, with our friends, the friends that we have chosen to be the ones that we want to hang out with and make a part of our life. Let's make it count. Let's make sure that if we die tomorrow, that we die and we are straight and we are righteous with all of those people. And we want to make sure that we are decisive with our time. We want to make sure we are protective with our time. We want to make sure we're motivated in that time. We don't want to be lazy. We don't want to be procrastinating. And we want to get shit done. We try not to swear on this podcast, but I'm going to swear. You got to get shit done. You can't be sitting back and letting everything try to come to you. You got to make things happen.
Here.
So as far as the 5-year caveat, so there's always, there's always another way of looking at things. It has to be in a sweet spot. So we do have a responsibility. That sweet spot is called quality of life. So when we hit that crazy clock and we have that 5 years, that 5 years can't be 1 year being bedridden and peeing yourself and sitting in your own soiled, diapers and having bed sores and sitting down and watching TV and never seeing a sunset, never feeling the sweet breeze of a summer day, not smelling the salt of the ocean, not being able to go out there and grill a steak. That's not the crazy clock. You've passed the crazy clock. That's past the 5 years. It's time to die now time. Let's not get there. Let us do everything to improve and give ourselves the best opportunity for those 5 years to have the best quality of life. So we have to position ourselves to slow down that game clock. We have to delay the crazy clock. We have to make sure that we go into that 5 years in the lead. Again, another sports analogy, 2-0, 14-0, 17-0, 21-0, whatever.
I agree.
We have to pay attention to our diet, to our self-care, to our hygiene, to our habits, to our medical maintenance, to our strength and fitness. We want to make those 5 years awesome, high quality of life. We have to commit to that. So if we have that 5-year plan in place, we are positioned to enjoy every second of those 5 years. And look at your family. We talked about this with the crazy clock. Look at yourself as an actuary. Look at where your Achilles heel is. Where is it that you are going to have trouble with? With me, it was always my weight. So heart healthy, losing weight, strength, fitness, making sure that nothing comes in to upset my health during the crazy clock during those 5 years. It's almost like when I was studying for my boards, I wasn't particularly strong in the physics or the biology part of of my boards. I was great at the clinical stuff. So what did I concentrate on, Angel, when I studied? Concentrated on physics and biology. You know what? I got the best scores in my boards were in biology and physics because I was proactive and I really prepared myself, and I actually did better in the two things I was weakest in because I was ready for it. So the same thing with the 5-year plan. And the last thing we'll talk about with this 5-year plan is, and I just found this out actually, Angel, when I gave that talk at the memorial for the hospital. There's really nothing to be afraid of. And I was always the one that was so fearful of death and losing my life and the whole thing. And when I was preparing for the memorial service, I wrote a piece and I thought to myself, what can I say that hasn't been said before? And the people that were speaking in front of me, there was a priest and there was a rabbi, and I knew what they were going to say. They were going to say, there's a heaven and we're going to see all the ones we love. And, death is nothing to be afraid of and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, let me think about something that hasn't been said before. And I thought about it. And you want to know something? I may have helped a lot of people in that room that night, but you know who the first person I helped was me.
Yeah.
Because I figured it out. I almost had that moment of inspiration, that moment of clarity. And I thought to myself, death is not a death. We use the word death, but it's just a change in our state. We're going from the state that we know now, that spiritual beings that are wearing these oversized meat suits, right? That's called our body. And we're going to become spirit, which is a completely different state. Now, the problem is we can't comprehend that state. And I get that, but that's okay. As long as we know that there is a transition from one state to another, and that other state is a good state. It's probably better than the state we're in now. We don't know this, but I have to think it is because of all the suffering that we endure in this life. I have to think that the next state of existence is going to be a lot better than the state we're currently in. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is that the most important thing not to be afraid of is that we're going to become knowledgeable about something that's completely unknown, something that we don't talk about, something that we don't think about. And that's what happens next. What is the last page of that mystery novel? What is it that would be the last X-File, chapter? Like, what is out there? What is it? What does God look like? What does our creator look like? Isn't it going to be amazing? Like, it's going to suck to leave the ones we love, but we're going to be in a state, we're going to get so many questions answered. We're going to have so many mysteries revealed that I don't want to say I want to go jump off a bridge to make that 5 years go any faster. But I have to tell you, I feel a whole lot better about the 5-year plan than I did about a week ago. Angel Santana, have faith, let it begin. Your thoughts?
I'd like to say that every point was valid. But I also would like to add a point that I thought of. And I think it would be the first point of all your points. And that is, don't give up. Ride out those 5 years. If you're being told that you only have 5 years left, do not give up. Do not lose hope. Hope in the sense of, yes, you know that in those 5 years, the time will be up and the time will be now. However, it doesn't mean that you have to stop right there and then. Ride out those 5 years, because you may learn more about yourself in those 5 years than you did in the last 5 minutes. So always remember that, and remember that, yes, there is a secondary part to this life that we're here and we've been created to do, but there's just so much more that we have not even began to scratch the surface on. And that is the hope and peace that hopefully everyone has been given and granted today.
Angel Santana, I couldn't have said it any better. What a nice way to wrap up. You know what? The 5-year plan, not a bad way of living your life. To our amazing survivors/thrivers, let's all live that 5-year plan. Whether you have stage 1 cancer, stage 4 cancer, no cancer, whether you're 20 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, 100 years old, let's all try the 5-year plan. I really think it's a healthy way of looking at life. And I want to just end by, first of all, thanking Angel, Rod Freeman, the board of directors. I want to thank Michael John, Benzea, Charlotte Larson for their belief in us. And I just can't say enough good things about you all. And of course, why do we do this? Why am I sitting here at 9 p.m. When I'm exhausted and I can't even talk anymore? It's because of you guys. Why does Angel, who has to get up in 2 hours to go to work, why is he here? We're here for you guys. We're here not just for people that are, gonna survive 20, 25, 30, 40 years. We're here for those people who aren't. We're here for the stage 4 patients. We're here for patients who've just been given the news that maybe they really do only have 5 years to live. And I'm hoping that this podcast gave you, as Angel said, that hope to enjoy those 5 years to the best of your ability. But I'm also here to tell you how important you are, how loved you are, how worthy you are, how brave you are, how courageous you are, how smart you are, how incredibly unique you are. You guys are just so inspiring to us that it makes the entire CROC organization so proud to serve you and to give you these small little tidbits, and we hope touches at least one person every week. If more, great, but just one would be just fine. So in closing, as we close every episode, every podcast, on behalf of Angel and Rod and the board and everyone else here at CROC, we all wish you the greatest, longest, most peaceful, happiest, blessed, inspiring, fulfilling, impactful life you can live. God bless you. God be with you. Peace.